This conference will now be recorded.
Alrighty, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Kingston City Land Bank at our monthly board meeting. Today's Monday, September 28th, 2020. My name is Caitlin Armstrong, and I am the Senior Account Clerk for the Kingston City Land Bank and the organizer for our virtual meetings. Before we begin, I would like to go over a few guidelines in order to navigate this meeting as efficiently and respectfully as possible. We ask that all members of the public mute themselves for the length of the meeting, with the exception of the 10 minutes reserved for public comment. As organizer of this meeting, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. I also reserve the right to pause the meeting and eject anyone acting inappropriately. The board members and staff will be in charge of their own mute buttons. Just a reminder, it's good practice to mute yourself when you are not speaking or to avoid interference of background noises and feedback. If a board member wishes to speak, they'll raise their hand and the chairperson will call on them before they speak, stating their name clearly for our audio listeners. All of our meetings are recorded and transcribed. They'll be posted on the Kingston City website. During today's meeting, the board will go into executive session. At that time, members of the public will be excluded from participating in the meeting. This portion of the meeting will be held right before the meeting is adjourned, so no one will have to rejoin. Thank you for your patience during this difficult time. I will now turn the meeting over to Chairman Daniel Cantor.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I see there's a caller whose mic is on, I think. Still on. Caller number 1, can you mute yourself? We'll see what happens. Welcome. Calling this order to meeting to order. It is 6:35. We're switching on the agenda a little bit because we're doing executive session at the end. Normally at the top we do public comment period, trying to keep it 10 minutes, around 2 minutes per speaker. Caller number 1, can you please mute yourself? Just to preempt a couple of things that have come up in previous public comments period, just so everyone knows, we are in the process of running title and environmental on 5 properties. Three are 52 grand, 46 grand, and 488 Hasbrook. There are 3 adjacent properties. Another one is Rodney Street. So we've had some interest in both of those. We'll get to a bit more later, but they are in progress. We're waiting on title on Rodney and trying to resolve some potential title issues on both of the Grand Street properties and the Hasbrook Street properties. So that's that. With that said, would anybody from the public like to comment or anything? James, take it away.
Yeah, if I could, just showing face, letting you know I still have interest in the Grand Street properties there, the old Grand Slam, as well as the adjacent real estate property. And that's really just it, just to kind of stay in the loop and stay in touch with what's the developments. And that's pretty much all I got, unless there's any questions for me.
Cool. Yeah, I think we thank you for your continued interest and engagement with our activities. It's high on the list is figuring out those properties, and the work that we're doing now will hopefully streamline any disposition process in the future. So it's all in progress.
I will mute myself here and just listen. Thank you.
I muted caller 1. I'm just going to unmute for a second to see if it's somebody from the public that wants to talk. Maybe. No, it's not letting me unmute them. No, I can't do it.
It does work, Caitlin. I think there's just a little bit of a delay when you
I got
press
it. No, caller one muted themselves now, so.
I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Cool. So just to dive in, it's been a really active month sort of behind the scenes of the land bank. So I just wanted to sort of broadly say to all the board members, I know that this summer has been a little wild and woolly and sort of hard to figure out how to engage everybody while we were sort of trying to navigate so many things behind the scenes with funding and these rehabs and enterprise and on and on and on. I think it's been a very productive month, very enlightening. I think we are on a much clearer path than we have been. And so lots of things are about to start happening. And I think lots of opportunities for board members to get more involved than it's kind of been hard to figure out the last few months. So I appreciate everybody's patience and support and understanding, and let's have some fun with the land bank. So with that said, we had, so Mike and I have been meeting with a representative from Novo Foundation for a few months now, generally once a week or once every 2 weeks. I think those conversations have been very productive. On Friday, we sort of reached a point that was a long time coming, and we are in talks about applying for a grant with them. So they've indicated that basically they are looking for kind of a better articulation of our budget, which we have, so it shouldn't take that much work to do that part. Kind of an operational plan, timelines, deliverables, this kind of thing. But essentially, they will be kind of nothing we haven't already kind of talked about. So with the enterprise grant, we're basically on the hook to rehab 5 homes to be sold as affordable housing. Novo wants to support that effort, which was sort of always the intention, but hard to get a formal commitment. So that is very exciting. So Mike and I will be working quickly to get all of that stuff to them so that hopefully we can have a signed grant agreement within the next month or so. And that will allow us to sign construction contracts in good faith, knowing that we will absolutely have the funds to pay everybody. So that's very good news. I'm very, very happy about that. So stay tuned. Part of what they've sort of brought up and offered, which I think is great, is providing some resources for consultants. They specifically brought up Patterns for Progress, which has a couple of kind of ongoing initiatives with the city already. They're familiar with Kingston. They have been invaluable help to various other land banks around the state and I believe the country. So it's really exciting that Novo has sort of identified that we can probably use that help, and they'll be working with us soon. So that's great news. In addition to that, we've kind of had a lot of conversation around just better kind of communication between our organization and Novo, and a kind of more consistent reporting structure. So I think all of that is extremely positive news and kind of what we were hoping for. So good stuff there. Mike and I have also been working our butts off on getting these RFPs prepared. So as you guys know, the RFQ went out a couple of months ago. We've gotten pretty good 10 people who have submitted their information. It'll just sort of streamline the RFP process, assuming they also apply for that. But it is a beautiful, roughly 40-page long document that should be getting finalized probably end of this week, early next week, and we are aiming to have that next week. So that is fabulous news. I think the rough timeline is essentially that we're hoping to be able to start construction in early December, assuming that we can find people who are available and ready to go. But the scopes of work are done. They have been gone over and over and over by me, Mike, representative from REPCO, we feel like we've covered all the bases there. They're quite detailed. So that's been quite an effort, and I think is great. And you know, now that we've sort of done it for these first few houses, I think it'll really streamline the process moving forward when we're issuing for additional ones. So good news on that front. Just to circle back to the idea of like strategic planning and having like a real work plan, I think all of this very recent news from Novo that came in end of last week and over the weekend has really clarified kind of where we need to be and how we need to be thinking about that. They've also basically said that they would like to offer additional resources for us to work with the consultant to develop a multi-year business plan, essentially. And I think everyone's kind of been wanting to see that, and we haven't totally known like kind of where we realistically were going to be with all of this. So I think now we're in a very good spot to start that process. So that's good. And I think that's pretty much it for my general announcements. Yeah, that's what I got. So with that taken care of, does anyone have any questions, I guess, or Bob?
I don't know how comfortable you are with this, but I'd be curious in reading the RFP or the draft RFP, just from a perspective. So I don't know if you can send that out, or if you're uncomfortable with that, let me know, but I'd be happy to read it.
No, that's fine with me. I think when we're probably early next week, we still have a couple things to do, and I think our legal needs to kind of give it the final path, but yeah, that we can certainly send it around to board members.
Yeah, no, that'd be interesting. And one last thought is, you should look for a motion to accept the meeting minutes from our last meeting. But you were getting there. Okay, all right. So sorry.
Jumping my line. Okay. Karen?
I just wanted to add, I might go back to the public comment period, but Hugo Jewell just wrote a comment on the chat that says he wanted to know if a fossil fuel free or net zero energy plus approach will be implemented by using either the stretch energy code or passive house guidelines.
I am not a energy efficiency expert. However, the enterprise grant does require us to make best efforts to meet enterprise green communities, I believe is what it's called, which is a whole battery of environmental recommendations and regulations. So that is in there. You know, these are old houses where the budget is a concern and things need to be kind of kept in check. So we will obviously be making energy efficiency upgrades where practical. Some of this obviously will still be massaged a little once we get contractors in, but I am not familiar enough with those two specific things to really be qualified to answer that question. So there will be clearly energy efficiency upgrades, but I'm not positive whether they would meet those standards. Mike, does that sound about right? He'll take documents. Thank you, Hugo. Appreciate it. Okay, so I would love to move to adopt the prior meeting minutes from last month. So they were in the board package. Hopefully everybody has them or had a chance to look through them. Whoever wants to move first, go for it. Bob, is that a motion?
That's a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting
I
as
second
presented.
it. Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose?
aye.
Abstain? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Great work. Mike,
Thank you, Bartek, for great notes.
yes, as always.
Hey Daniel, sorry, before you pass it on to Mike, could you clarify with Novo, they've asked us to submit a formal proposal, is that right? And is there a timeline for when that needs to be done and when we'll have an answer for them or is that still up very much in the air?
So my understanding, so we will be getting something to them probably next week or early the week after. We are, obviously there's two sides to this, so we can control what we can control, but I'm hoping to have a grant agreement in place, at least like by the next board meeting, certainly by November's. It kind of bears on signing construction contracts because we need to have the funds to pay. So essentially they have, not agreed to a specific dollar amount. They're waiting on guidance from us, but I think as long as we, explain ourselves well and provide the information that they're asking for, and are reasonable in our request, it sounds like it'll be fine. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Cool. Mike, shoot.
Come on. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I will give my executive director's report. And if you have any questions, of course, as always, please feel free to ask. I will not try to reiterate what Daniel has said, other than just to underscore what a great milestone it is to be at this point with Novo, and kind of thank everyone again, as Daniel did, for your patience. But we got to this point with the RFP. I know, especially on the comms committee side, we're so excited to work fully engaged with you around the piece of community engagement and kind of telling people what we're about to do and what we're doing. And it's almost at that point. So thank you again, as Daniel said, for your patience on that. Trying not to reiterate anything that Daniel had already covered, I would also like to mention the other funding provider that we have, which is Enterprise Community Foundations, for which Caitlin and I have been predominantly working every 2 weeks to try to move that process forward and get them comfortable with where we are at as an organization in the context of understanding that our grant agreement was due to expire with them at the end of this calendar year. So having pushed that forward and shown them the progress where we're at, not only with the homes that we currently own, but also the RFP itself, they did agree late last week to extend the term for another year. So we do have that until December 31st of next year, which is, it's great. It's just a testament, I think, to the confidence everyone has in all of us and the work that we're doing. And they see that it sort of fits where they want us to be, to continue funding the great work that we're doing. And we hope more comes from that. The relationship appears, to be very good on both sides. So they really like where we're at. I don't have too much else to add. I will mention, as I have for every board meeting, my county updates, to say that there are no county updates, and we weren't able to have a call. So until there are future county updates, unless anyone has an objection, I'd like to take that off my list. But I do understand that you would like to be apprised of anything that happens. So if it's okay, something does come up, I will report out on it. But in the meantime, I don't want to waste your time, if that's all right. Cool. On the other section, just very briefly, I'm sure you're all well aware and just about to donate, but we do have a donate page on our website. It's through PayPal. Go there, send your friends there. It's all set up. It's the first phase of what I think will be some ongoing initiatives related to fundraising. But that would be my update. In the other category, this is part of a broader rollout that you'll probably see related to the RFP. We're trying to streamline, or I'm hoping to streamline the RFQ itself as well into a document that's more easy for people to submit rather than the Word document that we have up currently, which was just kind of the best that I could push out the door, hoping we would get it out there. We have had a good response, but I think when the RFQ is updated as far as how you submit it, and the RFP begins to capture a whole host of information, we'll have a much better way of kind of reaching out and interacting with members of the public, but also members who are interested in working for us and with us. So those are my very brief updates, unless anyone has any questions or comments or concerns. Thanks for your time.
Sorry, this is Omari. Has anyone donated through the website yet?
Mandy, I don't think so, right? No, but you can be the first. You can be the first.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking at the page, and I wonder if we need a little bit more kind of context for what their donation supports.
Absolutely.
Just, something to drive them a little bit.
That's a great point. And we are hoping with the fundraising committee to articulate the specific types of asks and why you would donate to the land bank and really build that out. It's more on the back end of the website, and getting some content from the committee itself is a big part of it as well. But it's a great point. Okay, thank you.
Cool. On that note, just for a smooth segue, it's not on the agenda, but I did want to officially appoint Karen to the fundraising committee. She is currently the only member, so please email me by the next board meeting if you would also like to join that fund. I think it will be pretty essential to our organization. Also, if you know people who might be interested who are not board members, they can also serve on that committee. So keep it in mind, please. Karen, are you okay with that?
This is Karen. Not so sure how okay I'm long-term being the only member of the fundraising committee. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it has a lot of potential to be super helpful and engaging in the organization. So hope you all send those emails to Daniel.
Yeah, we won't leave you alone there, but thank you very much for being the first to step up to do that. I think it will be great. Okay, so that's the fundraising committee update. Governance committee, I just wanted to flag, I think, Serena, you may be the only one that hasn't done the ABO training, unless you have.
I did. I completed it on the 23rd. Bob and I were at the same training.
Oh, great.
I'll testify to her presence there. She was there.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're all good on that. Great. Bob also brought up that we should probably have performance evaluations. I think that's a terrific concept. So that will be something that we discuss at governance next time. And we also are kind of in the process of discussing a couple of kind of minor bylaw amendments that you'll hear more about when we have more to share. Aneshka, you are the chair, so
Yeah, I'm glad that you took over because we didn't have a meeting. And so these are things that we would like to push ahead. And also just this idea of performance evaluations, I believe that they are self-evaluations and there's a format for it. Now, make sure that everybody gets a copy of that. And yeah, they come back to the governance committee. So it's basically a self-eval, sort of telling us, what you think you'd be doing, etc., and how this, how you're kind of helping the board along and what your contributions are. So yeah, and I think the deadline for that is what? Coming up, right? This is the end of October or something like that. It's coming up, I guess, when we're due for our yearly, is that the beginning of December, maybe? I don't know. I have to go and look at that.
Annual meeting is November. I
Okay.
don't think there's anything actually explicitly in the bylaws about doing the self-evaluations, but we can talk about it for sure. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but the suggestion was more about performance evaluations for staff. Correct?
Oh, okay.
If I could chime in just for a second, Daniel, I believe that I believe that the board should evaluate Michael. I think that Mike should evaluate Caitlin. I'm a 180-degree evaluation kind of person, so I think it should be a two-way deal so that Caitlin evaluates Mike and Mike evaluates the board. And I also think that the board should evaluate ourselves and set a performance program for what we expect to accomplish in a year, and then take a look at where we've been doing that. I think formal evaluations are helpful for people to know how they're doing and to know what they can, it gives everybody a sense of where they are instead of just, wondering. So I'm a firm believer in an annual evaluation program, but I like the 180 so that it's, the evaluator and the evaluatee have a conversation about whose needs are being met and how they're being met and how it goes forward. It also is a basis for, it's a basis for all kinds of things, for raises, for, how things are going, promotions. So I'm a big believer in that. So that said, I'll leave it in your capable hands. How's that? I'm happy to help if I can be helpful, but those are my thoughts.
No, thanks for that. That's very much appreciated. I mean, every organization I've ever worked in, there have been evaluations, right? So this is, not something that we should shy away from, and actually will help us, especially looking forward toward the next year and what we would like to see as our next year's accomplishments is also a good exercise. And hopefully we can find a structure to do that in this Zoomed or whatever this, it's not Zoom, it's something else, GoToMeeting environment. So yeah, point well taken, Bob, and we'll reach out to you if you have, if we have questions. Thanks.
Daniel, one of the follow-ups from the last meeting was receiving clarification from the legal counsel on including community members on committees. Is that something that occurred? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, we did talk about it. So that was one of the potential bylaw changes that I mentioned. As far as we read it in the bylaws, it's the same process by which I appoint regular board members. It's not particularly clear, but it does say that committee members can be both board members and non-board members. So.
Great, okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention, neither here nor there, that we talked to legal about was the question came up of whether contractors who were bidding on the rehabs could potentially also apply to be homeowners. And the answer essentially is yes, it would need some special considerations, but it is a navigable thing, and the one does not preclude the other. So that's good news. Okay. So acquisition and disposition committee did not meet, but it's been sort of an active month with these title searches and everything. So we are still waiting on Corporation Counsel with the City of Kingston to provide documents to the title search company regarding the Rodney Street property. That has been, I believe, since July, so getting a little frustrating. We do have a meeting with Corp Counsel and the mayor and Mike and me for, I think, the first week of October to try to get everyone on the same page and sort of streamline the way this is working, because obviously we did not anticipate it being quite this lengthy of a process. Along with that, we have now done this with 10 properties. I think only 3 of them have shown up without fairly significant title issues in the form of liens. These liens, as far as we understand, should have been extinguished by the municipality when they were foreclosed on, but we are working with both our attorney, other land banks who have probably dealt with some of this, and obviously the City of Kingston's Corp Council to try to clear all of this up so that everyone is on the same page and we can hopefully make these acquisitions happen much smoother in the future. So that's kind of my update there. Because both the enterprise grant and the upcoming grant with Novo require 5 homes to be rehabbed. We obviously still need 2 more. So it appears that Novo would, as part of our grant agreement with them, they would be specifically in Midtown. That's fine. We have properties to choose from, and I think we all know that there's need there. So I believe there's about 5 properties that are all in Midtown. So we'll be looking closely at those as kind of the next round. But for the moment, we're kind of putting a pin in these title searches because it costs a fair amount of money to get this stuff done. And if we're kind of coming up with the same problem over and over again, we should probably resolve the problem before we keep throwing money at it. So that's, I think, the update for that committee. Oh, I did want to officially, I think I keep forgetting to do this, appoint Serena to the Acquisition and Disposition Committee. She has been involved but not officially appointed. So that's taken care of. Any questions about that? Cool. Bartek, comms, tell us about it.
Comms did not meet this past month, so I have nothing to report.
Cool. Yeah, I think you guys will have a lot of work in the next few months. Okay. I think that's kind of all I have before executive session, right? Okay, so if I could move to executive session, which means it's just board and staff, no members of the public. I need a second.
I second it.
All in favor of moving to executive session? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time, members of the public. Thank you.
Daniel, just in the future, you'll have to try to, you have to mention why exactly you're going into executive session.
Sorry. We're discussing our budget.
For the
Dan, I'm sorry, but we just moved into executive session, so we gotta kick you out. But feel free to reach out over email. Happy to talk. Caitlin, can you kick people off? I think we also stopped recording, right? No,
I stop recording?
I
Yes?
think so.
This conference will now be recorded.
I didn't do a vote, but I think it's okay. All in favor of joining the world again? Great. Okay, sorry, Omar, go.
All right, so did everyone get a chance to look at the budget? I mean, I don't want to go through line by line. The general gist of it is that we're going from a budget of 509,975 that was approved for this year to 399,000 next year. So it's a 22% decrease in our budget. Wish I would thank Mike for figuring out how to cut some corners, especially since we were waiting on that NOVO funding agreement. The biggest changes were just the increase in consultants, which includes the owner's rep, an operations consultant, and CFO position. So those would be the big costs for this year, or increase in costs. And then the increased development costs for the homes. But did anyone have any specific questions about the budget after reviewing it?
Could I just make a comment, Omari? And I think it's more just, from a, kind of budget perspective, I just want to thank Mike and his team and the finance committee for, doing a thorough job on helping to put together the 2021 budget. It's difficult to put together a budget when you don't have all of the figures known to you, and we're doing it, well in advance. And so I want to thank you for doing it in advance. It really has helped with the city budget, as you know, and as we've talked about before. This is really a shared, kind of staffing role that we play. And so with this budget, the land bank is going to basically provide half of the salary for Mike and Caitlin, where the city of Kingston, as part of the housing budget, will, support the other half of those positions. And in order for me to know what that is, we kind of needed the land bank to be able to come up with a budget, sooner than the end of the year, because my budget is due to the council in a couple of weeks. And so I want to thank everybody for taking the time to do that in advance, maybe a little earlier than we have in the past. And to, as the city of Kingston goes through its budget process, I would just ask that folks stay informed of that process. And as it goes through the finance committee, Mike will have an opportunity to talk about the Director of Housing Initiatives and what that position means and how it's funded and what role the land bank plays. And so I would just encourage folks to, just keep aware of that process. And I know Mike and Daniel will keep everyone involved too, if they hear anything, but, budgets are always tough. And, I'm not sure what, the Common Council will have to say about, this new budget going forward. This will be the first time that we actually had a Director of Housing Initiatives and, this type of relationship going forward. So I just wanted to state all of that. And again, thank everybody for doing the due diligence on this.
Yeah, if I may, just to add to Steve's comments, because one thing that I was often, as a producer in the industry, in charge of was the budget. And I would always get crickets when I said, okay, so how does the budget look to you? And the reason why you're not getting anything from me is because I don't even understand how this budget was made. You know what I mean? But I admire and thank everyone for bringing it in an unbelievable, the amount that we're saving is really unbelievable. And my comment to that amazing savings is that I hope we're not shortchanging ourselves. That's all that I'm going to say. because I am not educated enough to look at this budget critically. So I have a lot of faith in everyone who put this together, and I hope that at the end of the year, you know, we're not saying, oh my God, this is too scary, we can't do this again. So anyway, I'm being a little bit of a naysayer, but that's because I'm not familiar with the process.
Yeah,
If I
thank you.
could just call, oh, sorry.
And go ahead, you can go ahead.
Just a couple little things that I think aren't necessarily immediately evident when you look at this. So one obviously is just certain things have changed. So we, you know, don't have these really high anticipated office expenses. That's a big difference between years past. I think kind of probably biggest thing, well, is first that the total annual budget, including the development cost, basically has gone up $1,500 from last year. So, you know, the overall budget is actually not that different, but we've significantly cut down other costs, which is great. So that's why we haven't had a huge net increase. The other thing that's noted on here under the development cost for net acquisition is that it does not include the City of Kingston controlled acquisition fund. What that refers to is the remaining grant that Novo provided for the rehab of the Franklin Street offices, which are no longer happening. We are hoping to rehab that as a home, which it historically was. So, so that money did not, it's with the city. It did not ever come to the land bank. It did not ever leave the land bank. But because it's not being used for this office renovation, Novo has unrestricted its use to be for buying down the acquisitions of other properties. So essentially, as we acquire things, that fund will decrease. So that's not included in this budget, but is, you know, close to $300,000 resource. So that's, those are a couple things I just wanted to call out. Oh, Mari, sorry.
Thanks, that's great.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, and just to speak to what Anushka was saying, I think, you know, Mike has been a little bit, you know, unable to give a full sense of like a work plan yet because of the challenges around the Novo funding. And so, you know, I think that will help clarify some of these items. And I mean, it's hard because I think Daniel and Mike and Caitlin are working on this every day and are trying to figure it out. So I think it's hard for us in a short meeting to really understand all the ins and outs. But yeah, I think we'll get a better picture, you know, as we're moving towards next year, and really be able to provide comment as a full board.
Yeah, and especially as we are assembling this fundraising committee, it'll be really critical for us all to, you know, especially in the fundraising area, to really understand what do we need, how, you know, how much money do we actually need to raise for what, etc. Very obvious,
Absolutely.
but
No, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Were there any other questions about any line items? I think besides the things that Daniel and I pointed out, everything else was a reduction or kind of stayed the same.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I would note, not a question, but is certain of these costs may be reimbursable by enterprise or upon second sale of the property. So enterprise has been a little bit iffy about what they will and won't reimburse, but as far as we know, those things are noted on here.
I actually had a question if there's a moment. In the August meetings, meeting minutes, it came up that we were going to see if anybody needed anything moving forward from the committees, but we didn't actually meet. None of the committees met in August.
Oh, you didn't meet in early September?
Well, we didn't, not that I'm aware of. I think
Oh.
we asked on a couple meetings because you guys were kind of holding off until there was something to report, which I totally understand, but I don't think we actually had a chance to discuss whether we wanted to put anything into the budget. And I don't know if I'm just trying to make that connection before we lose that moment forward.
Okay. Was there something specific that you wanted to add?
Well, we had tabled the community engagement, and I just wasn't sure if that was a line item because I'm new to the board, so I don't know if that's something that's just included and we've just pushed it forward to next year, or if it was something that we needed to speak now or forever hold our peace. So I don't know if there's a problem, but I don't want to wait until it becomes a problem if there's
Right.
$500 or $1,000 that we need for community engagement that then isn't anywhere in the budget earmarked.
Yeah, I do. Go ahead.
There's $3,000, which was added because of the board's request, which is $500 per committee. I don't think all committees will spend $500, so potentially that frees up money for other ones. I think what we said in the last meeting was if board chairs had specific money requests to email them to Mike. As far as I know, he didn't get anything, but so there is $3,000 earmarked for committees. Also, as Steve said, budgets are sort of fluid documents, so I think if things come up, we can probably find it, but yeah. Does that address that?
Yeah, just from a communications perspective, when I looked at this budget, I made sure there was a line item to support any external communication we wanted to do, Serena, and there is 5,000 proposed for 2021, which will be more than enough to cover, any of our local needs.
All right, I appreciate you getting back to me on that because I also had technical issues with the last meeting, so I don't think I heard a lot of this stuff. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Serena. Okay, any other questions before we vote on this budget? Okay. Do I need to ask for a motion?
I'll make a motion. Accept the budget.
Okay. Yep. Motion to pass the budget. Karen has. Anyone second?
Second.
All in favor to pass the 2021 proposed budget?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I'm going to abstain just because you guys are paying the city at some point down the line for our staff.
Sounds good.
For that decor. Cool. Budget 2021 proposed is passed. Cool. Thanks, everyone. And also thank you, Mike and Omari, for all your hard work on this. Much appreciated. I think that's all I got. Does anybody have any new business announcements? Anything exciting?
Sorry, I might have missed this earlier, but I saw, Mandy, you shared the board evaluation form for the ABO. Is that something that like Mike would fill out for us, or is that a self-evaluation? I didn't.
That's something that each one of you have to fill out, and then you give it to either Caitlin or Mike, and they look at them and review them.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a confidential evaluation. So you don't sign it. You just fill it out, get it back to them.
I see.
I mean, if you email it, obviously they're going to know it's yours, or if you just drop it off, they don't know.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I guess I'll just note, and apologies if I flubbed this. So I think the way we're doing this is committee chairs should email Caitlin to confirm whether or not they want to hold a meeting this month for their committees, and submit a agenda at least 48 hours. I don't know what we said before the meeting. Caitlin, does that sound right?
Was it 48 hours? I thought it was longer, but that's fine with you guys. I'm good with that. I'm totally fine. I can distribute it.
Let's say 50 hours. All right. I think that's all I got. Motion to adjourn.
Motion?
I'll second. Can I second? All in favor of adjourning?
Yay.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. See y'all.